Surely every parent has had at least one moment in their parenting career when they wanted to quote this next word to their children. It's word number 5 in the list, and here's how it reads. Honor your father and your mother, as the Lord your God commanded you, that your days may be long, and that it may go well with you in the land that the Lord your God is giving you. Word number 5 is just that. Honor parents. The word here for honor is the Hebrew word kaved. And the idea here is actually rather interesting. It's a word that's used in various ways, noun form, verbal form throughout the Old Testament. And it has a sense of heaviness or glory to it. In other words, in some places, the word can actually mean something that is heavy or weighty. In other places, it seems to refer to glory or attaching glory to something. I think the idea is that there is a heaviness or a weight that you assign to someone or that you attach to someone in terms of respect. And here, it's the person or the people that brought you into the world. Whenever my kids are disrespectful to their mother, or when they aren't quick to obey our instructions, or when they seem to want to set their own rules, I would love to quote this verse to them. Honor your father and your mother. But I resist. Why? Well, because as I look at the list of 10 words given us in Deuteronomy chapter 5, I think they are all given to adults living within the community. How do we know that? Well, if you look at the list, it seems like whoever this is written to must be old enough to own property, old enough to be married, old enough to have children to subject to service. And so I think these instructions are all urging adults to show honor or respect to his or her parents. In other words, if anybody should be hearing this word, honor your father and mother, it's not my kids, it's probably me. But why did this make it into the list? Well, in a world without 401ks or Social Security or pension funds, a parent's children represented their investment in their future. As parents grew older, they would usually stay in the same house, but their kids would take up the main residence. And the parents would gradually sort of move to the edges. As their abilities decreased, so would their responsibilities within the household. And so, the Israelites were intended to give honor and reverence and respect to those who raised them, even beyond the years when they lived under their strict authority. In other words, it seems like Yahweh is encouraging the people here to care for and respect their aging parents just at the moment when perhaps it becomes a little more inconvenient to do just that. But then, notice what happens. A promise is attached to this. Paul even makes note of this in the New Testament, right? Here's what the promise is. Your days will be long in the land, and it will be good for you. That is an encouraging word. So here's one way that you could then disobey this word as you lived out your life. Once you were a little bit older and your parents then started to get a little bit older, maybe getting to the age where they might need to depend on you in some way, depend on you for some resources, you could take some of the money that you would have given to them, and then you could designate it as a special God services fund. So your parents would be left without your financial assistance, left to kind of figure things out on their own, but you could continue to use your God services fund however you saw fit. Of course, this violates the idea, but what does it matter? Isn't it cool to have a God services fund? Well, this is exactly the situation that Jesus seems to rail against in Mark chapter 7. The religious leaders of his day had done just this. They had taken money, put it aside, and Jesus says, and in so doing, you reject the commands of God. Yikes. It's a violation of God's word to set yourself up for success and in the process, ignore or cast aside those who brought you into the world. And so then practically, I think the community of Israel should be a community where the elderly are honored. They're respected. Each child should, yes, give honor and respect to his parents. But I think, actually, if this word plays itself out within the community, it creates a whole culture where you respect your elders. You give honor to those who are older than you. So what does this look like then as we work it out in the book of Deuteronomy? Well, I think this parallels with Deuteronomy chapter 17. Deuteronomy 17 contains several different instructions about what to do at certain points in the history of Israel as they move into the land. The first thing that it addresses in Deuteronomy 17 is the difficult cases that are going to arise in the land. In fact, this sort of details the Supreme Court of sorts, what's supposed to happen. The Levites and judges are going to hear the cases that come before them. But then here's the interesting part. There is a strong emphasis in this section on not just what it's going to look like when those decisions are made, but then there's a strong emphasis on carrying out the judgments. The instruction is not just who should decide, it's about how all of the people must ensure that they are carrying it out, fulfilling everything that God has asked them to do, everything that the judges have decided. And if they don't, there are going to be serious consequences. What's the message? I think it is honor the authority that God has set into place. And so, honor legal decisions. This is similar then to the next section, I think, in Deuteronomy 17, verses 14 to 20. Although it's a departure, from the main theme, the basic idea is the same. What do you do with authority within Israel? Here, Moses gives instructions about setting up a new king. Now, Yahweh was supposed to be the people's rightful king, but Moses knows, and I think Yahweh knows, that the people are going to want a king, and that's okay. They make a way here for the people to sort of set up a king of their own. But when that king comes to power, there are very specific regulations. First, that king must not be obsessed with consuming more and more, whether it's wives or horses or wealth. That will quickly lead to the king's downfall. Moses well knows the dangers of consumerism. Instead, the king has a task. This is significant, I think. Of all the things that Yahweh could have the king do as soon as he steps onto that royal throne, this is the thing, right? He's supposed to, it says, write out his own copy of the Torah. I'm not joking. I'm serious. That's actually what it says. Deuteronomy 17, verse 18. Handwrite a copy of the Torah. Now, this Torah that he's supposed to write out must then be approved by the Levitical priests. And then he's supposed to keep it with him and read from it all of the days of his life. I don't know exactly what this Torah looked like. This could be just the book of Deuteronomy. This could be the whole of the first 5 books of the Old Testament. But whatever it is, he's got to write out the whole thing. I mean, just think about this. The king of a whole nation enters into service, and the very first thing God has him do is essentially copy work? Yes. But I think there's a reason why. You see, God provides some of the logic for this in the verses that follow. He says he needs to learn to fear the Lord, and because he should not lift up his heart against his brothers or above his brothers. The Torah keeps you humble. Reading from it every day actually forms you. If he keeps it with him, if he constantly meditates on the words found within, just like the man in Psalm 1, what he will find is it makes him into the type of person who hears the voice of Yahweh. He will become a person in authority who actually respects authority. He knows that authority that he has, that authority has been given to him by God, and he will work hard to protect against abuse all throughout his kingdom. Notice then the promise that is connected to this instruction about the king. It says, so that he may continue long in his kingdom. What's the promise connected to the word about parents? That you may live long in the land. And so I think both word number 5 and Deuteronomy 17 deal with this issue of authority. Respect and honor those that God has put into place. Someone once said that those who have no respect for the past will have no future. Honoring God's authority is a way to respect the past, to bring him honor for the way that he has arranged the universe. So then what would it look like for us living here and now, today, to shema this word in our lives, to listen to it? Well, I think At its very basic level, we can just honor the God-given structures and authorities that he has put into place. Don't try to overthrow the social order. Now, at the same time, I think we need to make sure that we are championing the causes of righteousness and justice. If our leaders are not demonstrating righteousness and justice, I think there's a sense in which we have a responsibility to work for it even harder. Now, surely this takes the form of prayer and petitioning God for these things, but I also think it can look like social activism or nonviolent appeal. God cares about justice. Here's another idea. Maybe if you find yourself in a position of authority, consider taking the encouragement from the book of Deuteronomy, the encouragement to the king, as a personal encouragement even to you. Start writing out your own copy of the Torah. I've recently started doing this, trying to write out my own copy of the book of Deuteronomy so that I can read it and meditate on it even more. And I think there's just a practical sense here in which the more we read these words, the more we begin to understand what these words actually have to say, the more they change our hearts, the more we begin to live them out in our lives. As much as it depends on you, honor those who are older than you. Care for, listen to, respect the older generations. Of course, this doesn't necessarily mean you obey everything they say, but at least you give them the proper respect. In fact, here's a way to do this even now. In the next few days, why don't you find someone who is at least 10 years older than you and think of a way to demonstrate respect and honor for them. An old proverb says that when an elderly person dies, a library burns to the ground. Perhaps we should recognize the critical value, the wisdom, and the experience that our elders have. Maybe we should be concerned about loving our older neighbors. Maybe we should be more concerned about that than just living in isolation like we would perhaps want to. Maybe we can silence some of our own self-assuredness, some of our own arrogance, even some of our own self-sustainability, to actually allow our elders to speak their wisdom into our lives. If we can begin to do this, I think we can begin to restore honor to those to whom it is due, and we can begin to live out once again the word that God has for us here.